Kia ora koutou, hi and welcome. My name is Simon Bowden and I will be facilitating this meeting. I am a musician and an arts philanthropy consultant. Shortly I'll start with a karakia. We acknowledge that this is a very challenging time for all New Zealanders, and we are thinking of people that are facing hardship, illness, and in some cases having to say goodbye to people without being there. Our panel today is Richard Benge, the Executive Director, and Stace Robertson, Access, Inclusion and Participation Advisor from Arts Access Aotearoa. We have Kelly Hodgins from Platform Interpreting New Zealand and Arts Marketing Specialist, Rachael Penman. Jeremy Borland is signing the hui today and will also be able to do sign interpreting if anybody needs their sign language turned into words for us. From time to time, Kelly will also be doing that. So if you're just joining us, we recommend that you find Jeremy Borland as the participant, and you use the top right-hand corner to locate 3 dots in a blue box, and you pin Jeremy so that you can see him through the whole session. Great. Everyone is welcome to contribute ideas to this discussion, and our panel, once our panel has spoken, I will open it up for anyone who would like to ask a question or add to the conversation. So that we know that you want to do that, there's 2 ways to do it. There's a chat on the right-hand side. If you put your cursor over the bottom, you will see that the chat, opening up the chat is one of the options. Inside chat, you can write a message just to me or just to one other person that's on the call, or you can send one to everybody. The other way that you can let us know that you'd like to speak is by using the reactions button, where there's a nice little symbol of hands clapping, which I'll press now, and we will try and spot that and bring you into the conversation. If you press that button and we fail to see it because there's so many people on the call, then please feel free to press it again. And also please note that this session is being recorded and will be published at a later date. Kia ora koutou. Here's the karakia. Whakataka te hau ki te ura, whakataka te hau ki te taonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. He aki ana te akukura, te ao, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. All right, before we start, I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves, and they are going to give us their name and their position in the arts. And I've also got a nice question for them. I want them to tell us when they can, who is a person they are looking forward to giving a hug to when we can hug people again. And it would be great if everybody else on the call, I wish we had time to invite you all to say this, but I think we would be here for some time. For all of you who are able to, it would be wonderful if in the chat you typed in who you were and how you're related to the arts, and just let us know who you're looking forward to giving a hug to when the time comes. Right, so from Arts Access Aotearoa, please welcome Richard Benge.
Kia ora koutou. Yes, I'm Richard from Arts Access Aotearoa. I work with a team of colleagues, and it's great that Stace Robertson is with us today as well. Arts Access Aotearoa, you may know or may not, is the organisation that works entirely for improving access to the arts across Aotearoa. What does that mean? Different things for different people. When we're reaching out to include disabled people in the arts, we try to assess the barriers that are out there in the community that creates the disability for people who have access needs. We also work with artists and producers and festivals and the like, with the help of Creative New Zealand, to help people make their art, their production, their performance, their exhibition, to be more accessible and inclusive of all people. So that can be people who are deaf, or they might not be able to be people who can see, or they might have physical needs and mental health needs, right across the spectrum of our communities and our humanity. So it's really great to be here and be part of this national conversation, because one of the things that I've noticed is, wow, we're all having barriers to accessing the arts now. It's become a very level playing field, and I think that many more people will or should have more knowledge of what it's like to face barriers to anything, barriers to their friends, barriers to getting what they want, barriers to their freedom. But in our topic today, it's barriers to accessing and participating in the arts. And that's what 20% of New Zealanders face all the time. And it's around about 20% of people who identify as having a disability or an impairment. So that's who we work for and with.
So who would you?
Yeah, the person I'm wanting to hug is my daughter Sarah, who is living with her mother in Lower Hutt, and I'm in Newtown in Wellington, so a bit of a distance, but thank goodness for Zoom, we can chat. Thank you.
Rachael Penman.
Hello, I'm Rachael Penman. I work in the arts community as a producer, but also a specialist with marketing and strategy, and over the last 18 months have had a strong working relationship with Arts Access and Kelly around developing arts access for all to theatre goers, and working with that, which has been really great, and something that I'll talk about later, about how there's some positiveness out of what we're going through at the moment. I think regarding anyone to hug, I think my son would just say anyone please, because then I'll stop hugging him all the time.
Nice one. Kelly Hodgins.
Hi there, everyone. We've still got a couple of technical difficulties with some of our members trying to access the interpreter. So I'm just trying to help them pin the interpreter. So maybe Simon, if you could just repeat your instructions after I've spoken again, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. So I'm Kelly Hodgins from Platform Interpreting New Zealand. So we're a company who specialises, we're the only company in New Zealand who specialises in quality access to New Zealand Sign Language to the arts, providing New Zealand Sign Language to the arts. And we provide that through a package where we work alongside qualified specialised sign language interpreters who are specifically trained as performance interpreters. And we also work alongside deaf consultants who are members of the community who have background and knowledge within the arts to support us interpreters to make sure that all who come to any of the accessible shows and events that we help companies and organisations provide, that they feel like they have the best experience that anyone else standing next to them who's not deaf has. So that's a little bit about what we do. So yeah, and hugging, oh goodness, well, part of deaf culture to say hello to someone is actually that obviously got to know them a little bit before, not first time meeting, but you know, is that we actually hug one another. And so I had found that incredibly difficult. So I would like to give an overall encompassing hug to the deaf community, because I won't be able to do that for a very long time. So quite hard, but thank you.
So just thanks so much, Kelly. Just a reminder that if you're wanting to make sure you can always see the sign interpretation, find Jeremy Borland's, the screen with Jeremy Borland on it. And then in the top right-hand corner, there's a blue square with 3 dots in it. Click on that, and one of the options is pin speaker. Press that button and then you should see him all the way through. Stace Robertson, you introduce yourself and tell us who you'd like to hug.
Good day everyone, my name is Stace Robertson. I work for Arts Access Aotearoa as the Access, Inclusion and Participation Advisor. And I don't think I'm going to be fussy. I think the first person I see is going to be the person that I hug for a very long time.
Yeah. Thanks, Stace. And there's some wonderful comments in here. Some people talking about wanting to hug family members, of course, people they can't access at the moment. Some people wanting to hug other people on this call, which is very nice. Someone saying they want to hug everyone from their play centre. Kia ora, Nicola Owen. Right, here's how we're going to start the discussion. I'm going to just say a few words and then away we go. So we all have limited access to the arts right now. Artists and audiences are turning to the internet to create and experience work. Some have headed out onto the streets to do sidewalk drawings, and some are singing from their balconies. Our panel features people that work to provide access to the arts for all, and that's their speciality. So today we're asking them and inviting you all to tell us what the impact on experience in the arts as an audience member or as a practitioner has been on the communities that overcome barriers in everyday life to be part of the arts. Tell us, what are you missing? Is there anything that you might have gained? Is there anything that we are learning now that we could use to increase access to the arts when things return to normal? Is getting back to normal good enough? Many people are saying now is the time to bring about structural change. So what are the things that we could be advocating for? Okay, so you don't have to answer all of those questions, but I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and feelings on this important subject. Deliberately asked lots of questions so that you know that we're open to talk about anything in this territory. And I'm going to start by going to Richard.
Thank you, Simon. I've just reminded myself to unmute myself. When you were talking, Simon, I was reminded way back to a month ago when at Circuit Theatre, the performance Sorry for Your Loss, having its last night before the lockdown. And people there were saying, maybe this is the last performance, live performance we're going to experience for quite a while. And it had a eerie feeling to even consider that would be the last show, not on earth, but that the feeling of the last night. What was great for me at that show was that it was directed by Laura Hoey from Waikato University, who is a foremost leader in theatre for deaf, that includes deaf people and deaf actors. One of the things that she's taught me is how integrated, how you can integrate NZSL into theatre, and so that the combination of languages can be seamless. Just as we've got Jeremy signing today, we're being included as a community, so people who are deaf can be included in this conversation. So the same thing can happen in live theatre. And that's how, at Arts Access Aotearoa, we believe that everyone in New Zealand has the right to access the arts and therefore to express their stories, be entertained, be seen in the arts, whether it's a painting, an exhibition, or, as I was saying, in a theatre performance like Salonika that many of you might be aware of, that Laura and her team created. One of the things that we're learning at the moment through Arts Access Aotearoa is how quickly humans and through the arts we find ways of overcoming the barriers and getting through, a bit like water finding its level, trickling along and finding a way through, even though there are barriers all over the place. So gosh, we had COVID-19 in a period where there was this technology to take advantage of. So there are a lot of experiences and upskilling going on. And we wouldn't want to lose what we're learning now. So we're hoping that the better outreach that's happening, the uptake of social media and platforms like Zoom that we're on today, will be maintained to reach people in isolation, reach people in isolated communities, perhaps rural communities, or if you're in assisted accommodation, is a thing. And Stace can talk more about this, but the point of having a disability and working with others like caregivers to get you to the place where the art happens or the participation happens is a barrier, and it's always something that's being thought out and managed, should you be fortunate enough. Now, through technology, you can have this sort of conversation or participate in an art experience on your screen in your own home. We hope that people won't always have to stay in their own homes, and eventually they'll be out and about and connected to wherever they want to be. But what we've seen is just how important technology is in this outreach. For people who experience, many people who are disabled live on fixed incomes, and they might not have great access to the finances for data. So where there are online art classes, you might not even have a tablet, but if you have a tablet or a phone, you might not have the money for the data in the first place. So that comes right back to the issues of ticketing and the price of going to a show in a theatre. But then if it's great that, for example, Royal New Zealand Ballet has put out a performance, an interpreted performance, an audio described performance of ballet, but a lot of people couldn't download it or be part of it because they didn't have the data. So this all comes down to social inequities, which is another barrier across our society when we're talking about accessing the arts. I know the Prime Minister 2 years ago at the Creative New Zealand Nui Te Kororo conference spoke very clearly that she was very concerned about access to the arts, which is the number one thing. Interestingly, this is top of mind for us all right now.
Kia ora, Richard. Thank you very much. Rachael.
Just unmuting, kia ora. Thank you, Richard, for everything that you and Stace and your team do with Arts Access as well. I've come to learn some amazing things through your company over the last 18 months. So over the last 18 months, 2 years, I've been working to look at theatre for children to be accessible to all, and not being exclusive but inclusive. With Tim Bray Theatre Company, the audience is about 30,000 people a year to perform different performances. Kelly, who's with us today, is our New Zealand Sign Language interpreter and does a wonderful job with that. And we have 3 signed shows through the season. We also use audio described as well, Nicola Owen. And we also have recently been working very hard with children's autism and revisiting what a relaxed performance is and actually calling them relaxed. So really working with those that need and what they're wanting, but also making sure, as Richard said, these performances accessible not just for the needs they might have to understanding the artwork, but financially as well, through funding, the dreaded funding applications or what it may be, but a charitable arm to be able to allow that that hindrance to go away as well. One of the reasons that this has been really close to my heart is I have a 15-year-old son, turned 15 today, who is ASD and ADHD. So access to the arts has been something that obviously I'm passionate about. It's been my life, and to be able to take him to the theatre, has been difficult at times, with audience members asking me to keep my child still, to keep my child quiet, to stop him and keep him behaved. So that's where the passion around the sensory relaxed performances was really driven there as well. One of the positives out of where we are now, with everything that is going online, has been I've been able to sit with my son and actually watch some wonderful performances of world-class arts, and he can sit on his head, he can move around, he can do everything, which is really great. We've been watching Andrew Lloyd Webber's The Showmaster on season, which has just had the most phenomenally filmed productions of Phantom and the likes as well, which has been great. And of course the Royal New Zealand Ballet in New Zealand as well, being able to see those beautiful dot shows. So when we were going into this lock-up time, I did have a show that was going to be starting in 2 weeks into lockdown, and had visited around that accessibility of filming a show as live to be shown at a later stage for people, whether that be in classrooms for children or whether that had been to people that are rural and can't access or looking at a financially lower option as well. And I think that during these times where we are, that we can visit those opportunities. We've got some time to research and explore how we can add these to our future live performances. So also as companies, we can look at how we can make our websites more accessible for the needs, whether it be language, whether it be a signed video about how to purchase tickets on your website, whether it be larger words, whether it be working with Blind Foundation, who can send brailled press releases out. There are so many options out there, and Arts Access and Stace have a wealth of knowledge around that. And I think it's times like these that we can start to upskill ourselves in that and how we can communicate better.
Kia ora, Rachel. Thank you very much. Beautiful, building on what Richard has described to us. And it's wonderful to hear your commitment and Timbrace Company's commitment to all of those ideas. Interesting to note that you were both talking also about access issues related to affluence. And of course, if we have a long tail to this, then there will be more and more people who will struggle to get access to the arts simply because they can't afford to purchase a ticket or get there. So one theme will be what arts organisations, companies, producers can do, perhaps through online access at a much lower cost. Thanks for that. Kelly, what are you finding?
Well, just following on from your chain about the affordability, that's the same thing that the deaf community faces as well. We faced that before the lockdown, just not being able to access wonderful events just due to the fact that we have a lot of low-income families within the community and they'd love to go but just can't afford it. I think if we go back to prior to the lockdown, what we found is that we actually, the art world was starting to really acknowledge that there was a need for there to be accessibility for the deaf community, and people were really open to making sure that there was that accessibility there. And so we had a number of international and local events that were blocked in for the next couple of months, and really sadly, like many other people, missing out on those because they were cancelled due to COVID-19, which is really sad because we were hitting a really big climb in terms of people just wanting to really ensure that not just the token interpreting either, really wanting to ensure that they had, that the deaf audience members felt exactly the same as anyone else sitting in the audience with them. They had access the way it should be. You know, the interpreters were in the optimum positions, the lighting was right, everything was sort of going to plan, and we had this situation come upon us. So I think now that we've moved online, it's wonderful to see people now, you know, providing their art form to the rest of the world, not just New Zealand. You know, we've opened it up, but it's still extremely inaccessible to the deaf community. I had someone mention just recently about how there was that fabulous family, I think they were from Wellington, and I think they were the ones that actually did the song One More Day from Les Miserables. I think it was that family. I might be wrong, that might have been a British family, but I think there was a New Zealand family that did something similar, and they said it was great, it was going viral, but I had no access to it because there wasn't an interpreter interpreting the song for me, and I would have loved to have had access to that. So I think it's about getting back on board and working with companies, and how can we move it into this different platform where we're in a physical space beforehand with our interpreting. How can we bring that online so that deaf people can be enjoying it like everybody else? And I think it's really positive though to see that the Royal New Zealand Ballet, like we've been making sure through platform interpreting that deaf people are aware about these visual events, so they don't need an interpreter to facilitate watching something like the Royal New Zealand Ballet, which is fantastic. But it's all of the other wonderful stuff that's been created that we just don't have access to. And also funding was already difficult enough to pay for interpreters prior to lockdown. Now I think it's even more of an issue. And so it's just about trying to all work together in a team and be really open-minded, and seeing how on earth we can actually get this on board for the deaf community. So that's where we're at the moment.
Great, thanks, Kelly. So while it's becoming more important and we've got ability to have more understanding, we've now got to work out how we can fund this and support Richard and everybody's good work to make sure this becomes part of the new normal. Stace, you're working every day on this, aren't you, my friend? What are you seeing?
Yes, yeah, it's been quite incredible to see, particularly for people with physical disabilities. I didn't say earlier when I introduced myself, but I'm a disabled person. I live with 2 other people with disabilities. And in a lot of ways, this space, although as difficult as it is more accessible than the arts usually are. And we've, I think, gone to more things in the last month as a flat than we have in the last 6 months that we've lived together, because it's in our lounge and we can, you know, so many of the barriers that people experience to accessing art is not the art itself, it's getting there, it's finding out about it, it's knowing the context, it's having the cultural awareness, all those unspoken cues around what's appropriate behaviour in an art space. And suddenly people have access to explore the art without all of those things impacting on their ability to check it out and to see what everything is about. So I think that's been the main positive thing to come out of this. I think also the ability or the time for arts organisations to sit back and reassess and kind of think, well, we're doing things differently now. What does that mean? How can we incorporate access from the beginning in this way? There's a space to, I think, acknowledge that providing access doesn't reduce anything from the experience of arts. It only enhances it for everyone, not just the person with a disability or hearing impairment or who is deaf, to be able to experience the art on the same level as anyone else. I think that some of the barriers have been, as has been mentioned, the digital divide, the cost of technology and having access to the internet. There's still a large portion of the community that doesn't have regular access to those things. Disabled people, there's a statistic that gets mentioned. A lot of disabled people live on an income of around $16,000 a year. So the financial cost is still a barrier. And I think for the deaf community and for people who have low vision or are blind, there's the limitations of technology. So people like Kelly and audio describers like Nicola Owen are providing fantastic services. And I think there's some space potentially to see where technology goes in terms of live captioning and being able to build those things into live streams, which would greatly enhance access again. I think in terms of what I hope carries on after we're all back in our venues, our spaces, I hope that there's still a willingness to continue to explore possibilities, to say, we've done this now, we know that we can do things differently, we know that we can do things online, so how can we carry this forward? How can we keep making sure that people have access in lots of different ways? Yeah, I think there's that desire there and the knowledge now that it doesn't have to be the same. And you've all experienced to some small degree what it's like to not have access to something that you normally have access to. So yeah, that's the main thing I would encourage, is to hold on to that innovation and that sense of exploration. There's so we have on our website, there's a huge array of resources and connections and contacts. There's a section called Q&As, which are case studies, and many of the people working in Access around New Zealand have done them. So you can read a Q&A by Nicola Owen, who's an audio describer, talking about what the process of audio describing a show is, for example. So there's a lot of information there for you to check out if you're keen to learn more. And I'm always available to have a chat. I love nerding out about this stuff, so more than willing to support anyone in any way I can. You can join the Arts for All network, which is a space for arts organisations and venues to come together and talk about the work they're doing in access to the arts. And it's also a space for the community to connect and engage as well. And that's one thing I would really encourage, is to arts organisations and venues and promoters out there, is to really connect with the communities, talk to them, ask what they want to see, ask what their preferred way of accessing the arts is, because that's where you really get the gold, I think. And yeah, I think.
Kia ora, Stace.
Thank you.
Fabulous contribution. Thank you very much. And something you said sort of quite near the beginning, you know, when we get back together, let's make sure that we are all getting back together and that everybody has access. I love this notion too of, well, we've woken up to discover what's possible online, and we've heard 2 stories already of, I love the idea that you and your flatmates have been to more plays in the last 6 months than you had before. So we can do this. We can do this. There's going to be funding challenges and barriers, financial barriers. We can't stop the momentum. We know it's possible, and we're just at the beginning of something quite important. Thank you very much. Is there an arts practitioner on the call who would like to talk about how they're getting on at the moment? I'm wondering, you know, there's a lot of call for artists to be able to create work and share that work online, but it doesn't work for everyone, because sometimes you actually need support to be in an environment with other practitioners to be able to create the work. And right now you can't do that. It's not, I mean, I'm a musician and I can't put on an improvised music concert. The technology is not there yet. And it might be that some need to be taken to venues and supported in ways which aren't possible at the moment. So I just wondered if there was an artist on the call that wanted to talk about what they're experiencing in the lockdown. No takers. No one's putting their hand up. That's okay. Yes, there is. Samuel Wheeler.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Samuel, thanks.
All right. Okay. Well, basically, I've had to put halt on quite a few productions because I was just preparing for the New Zealand Burlesque Festival. So obviously that had to stop. And that's been a documentary that I've been working on for the last 7 years. So I've had to put a pin in that. I've had to put a pin in a couple of feature films that I was trying to complete because I can't shoot some of the final pickups where there's a lot of additional stuff that I needed. I can concentrate though on my publications, so that's fine. So my focus is on publications. Because my mother is also head of art at Montreal College, I've had to accommodate her needs as well, because she needs a studio space and she needs to have Zoom meetings with the rest of her staff. So that means my painting studio has been taken away from me. So now I'm painting on the deck. But I am continuing to practice. I'm very positive about the ways in which we can collaborate together. I'm also a musician, sir, so I understand your frustration there as well. And the puppet, the idea is I can use puppets and we can collaborate with music and puppets and dancers and bring something together using other digital aggregators. So I'm lucky enough to have monetized my YouTube channel. So, that's just recently happened. Just, I think, during the first week of lockdown, after waiting for about a year to be monetized, I finally got that happening. But also know that Boosted Live is starting something up where, we can make money online, streaming things there. It's really about marrying up the technology as we're talking about and connecting with other artists that can collaborate with us. And the audience is there, like I say, on platforms like YouTube. So they don't have to pay to see things there. We can still make money via views on YouTube. It's a matter of driving the traffic there. It's always about driving the traffic. So some additional support for marketing and advertising would be very advantageous for all of us art practitioners at the moment. That's
Kia ora, Samuel. There's no stopping you, is there? There's no stopping you. And please post a link. Please post a link to your YouTube channel in the chat. Now, Nicola Owen, a wonderful audio describer, has been mentioned a number of times by others on the call, and we're really lucky that she has joined us today. Nicola, do you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry, I've had the video off because we're playing blocks here, trying to multitask. Yeah, so I just wanted to share a little bit about our experience because obviously, like everybody else, we had bookings for the whole year booked in, and then suddenly everything stopped. And so we immediately applied for the wage subsidy, or for the self-employed subsidy for that, so that we did have a little bit of funds to keep going, which we've been using to support audio describing the ballet. And a couple of things have struck me, and I really noticed what Cheryl was saying there in the comments, that when the first one we did was trying to Zoom alongside a live Facebook feed, which isn't terribly successful. So now we've negotiated, so this weekend's ballet, they're actually going to, we've recorded the audio description, and they're going to create a single file that blind people can access with the audio description embedded. So that's hopefully going to be the successful way to do it, which we can carry on. So I think lots of people are learning how to work in this online space and do things in a way that we haven't done before. The second thing then is, as I was saying, Cheryl noted that often the small centres and the rural population don't get access to this at all because we tour the big city. The ballet is one of the companies that tours the most with audio description, but we still only do 4 centres, so most of the country's missing out. So we're, the spread for online, whilst there are always some people who are going to miss out because they don't have access to those online resources, the geographical spread that we can reach across New Zealand and actually the world is much greater. I know that for the last one we had people tuning in from Australia, South Africa and the UK, so we're actually spreading, yes you can, spreading the arts access message much wider than just New Zealand. But the reality is going to be that there's not endless funding for this, and so we've been able to describe ballets that we've already written the descriptions for, or the ones this weekend that are short. They're only, you know, it's about half an hour each, the Anzac salute performances, so they can be done within the confines of the funding we've got available. But the thousands of dollars that are going to be needed to make this ongoing, I have no idea where arts organisations are going to find that. And so I think, whilst there are great possibilities, and I really tautoko the comments that were made by the previous speakers about trying to embed that into our arts practice, you know, I would love that everything we audio describe, we also make a recording of, so that it can be then shared online for the future and reaching that wider audience. But certainly in that interim period where nobody has got audiences, nobody can open their theatres, it's really hard to imagine how we're going to find the funding, you know, for the audio description, for the sign language interpreter, where Arts Access has always been kind of seen as an add-on and the thing that comes from the charity dollar. And I guess that's the bit that worries me, how we can maintain that so that our audiences aren't left behind. You know, I mean, I guess blind people can always listen to the radio, but we're missing out at the moment on TV. The audio description on TV has been reduced significantly. And so we're really missing out in our community on access to, you know, to television programs and the broader arts. So I think there are really good opportunities. In fact, I was talking to an art gallery yesterday who are quite keen to look at putting more of their digital, their things online, their catalogue online, and how they can incorporate audio description into that. So again, there's that real possibility for expansion if we can fund it.
Thanks, Nicola. Yes, so how to ensure that this carries on, how to ensure that there's a dedication that wherever the show goes, there is this kind of support, is obviously a really critical issue for this whole sector, for the whole of the arts sector, to understand and support, and a message that we are going to need to take to someone. Kelly, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just actually following on from that, I think it's about actually just ensuring that we're connecting the right people to the right people as well, you know, just making sure that, yeah, whoever's providing that service actually is skilled in what and know what they're doing, and making sure that they can inform those who are wanting it the best way to actually go about that. So I think that's the first foremost thing. The other thing that we're facing with, and it was mentioned before, and thank you Stace for mentioning about captioning, it's a really great thing for the deaf community, but a lot of our community are actually English as a second language. English is not their first language, and so that's why they heavily rely on the sign language interpreting. And so I think that it's actually, again, connecting people with the right people, so that we can actually give them that awareness and explain and actually dissipate all those misconceptions that they may have about lip reading and captioning and sign language overall. So I think that's really important. Also important to know about the fact that to actually set something up like this, like what Nicola was saying about, you know, it's actually no easy feat, to be honest, to even be, we can do it if we have the right equipment, but because COVID came so quickly on us, my pool of interpreters that was already quite small, because we are a small population of you know, specialised interpreters in performing arts, has actually decreased, because they actually don't have, like I've got set up with a green screen and proper lighting, and I've also got a very high-end camera, and I was set up like that for a very long time. But for my interpreters that are coming on board, they actually don't have that access at home to that equipment to actually produce their translations that I need. So that's another thing that we're facing. They're ready to go, but they don't have the equipment. They can't get access to that equipment. So yeah, I was also just wondering if I could just hand over to Catherine Greenwood if there was anything else that she'd like to add in terms of how she's experiencing it from, she's one of my deaf consultants, and how she's experiencing access online as also a deaf community member as well as a deaf consultant. Is that okay to hand over to her?
Yes.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Catherine. Sorry, are we able to spotlight Catherine Greenwood just before we begin? Wonderful, thank you so much.
I've lost the interpreter now. Where's the interpreter gone? Never mind. Okay, so in my experience online has been quite amazing. There's been a lot of new videos that have sort of been making the rounds, like TikTok videos and music videos and that sort of thing. But like Kelly said, where's the access for others? And there are some that have captions, but not all deaf people are able to access captions because of what Kelly mentioned earlier. And interpreters are available, they're able to do interpretations, but then who's going to fund that? And so once again, it comes back to that funding issue. And so if you're in a live performance in a theatre, then there is funding for that. But then if something is presented online, now sorry, that's my daughter just coming into the shop there. I'm trying to manage with children at home, and me and my husband are working full time at home as well. I'm sure it's a similar experience to everyone. We've got, yeah, similar struggles. So anyway, I think there's been some great stories out there. Like the deaf community have set up a deaf positive Facebook group. And so there's videos and content that they're posting online. But in terms of mainstream content, that isn't really accessible for us. It's only content we've created within our own community. And so we're kind of entertaining each other, but we don't have access to the mainstream content. And I think Stace said, hopefully after this situation is finished and we're back to normal life, then hopefully a lot of those benefits that have come about because of COVID will continue, and we'll keep that momentum going.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I'm now feeling sad that I'm not accessing the material that you were talking about. I would like to see the artworks that the deaf community is sharing with each other in some way. So if you have any links, please do put them into the chat. And yes, I do hope that there is more dedication, more momentum from arts organisations and practitioners to work with partners through Arts Access Aotearoa to make more of the mainstream work available to everybody. Thanks very much for that contribution. Rachael wanted to speak.
Thank you. Catherine, your daughter, and yes, we're all trying to homeschool and do our arts and do our work all at the same time. I never want to be a teacher, that's for sure. Homeschooling is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I just wanted to talk at, well, firstly, Kelly, thanks for reiterating again actually that New Zealand Sign Language is for the deaf community for most a second language, and that was something that you brought to my attention, and particularly around websites and press releases that we put out and think that it can be read because it's the hearing that is the disability, but that's actually not correct, because the written language word is not something that can be done. So again, around everything that we are writing for our deaf community or placing on websites thinking that they can know how to find out how to use tickets and everything, it is really important that a lot of that information is signed as well, not actually just the performances. So actually being able to know how to access those performances for start, there's a barrier right there in the written English. So it's just to remember that as well. I wanted to speak at what has been brought up constantly around funding. I think in this time, as an administrator of this group as well, as Kane and Forbes and Simon Bowden here, along with a wonderful team of others, including Square, who I think is here, is on this call.
Don't forget Bridget.
And Bridget's here as well, brilliant. So I think there is definitely something that we're aware of, making our group and these panels accessible, hence why we've invited Kelly and Jeremy here, and wanting to grow that as well. And so we will be looking at a funding avenue for us to be able to do that, so that all of these learning lunches and things that we do are accessible to the arts community out there, and we take those barriers away. And Nicola, I would like to talk to you about that as well. But on a bigger picture, I think that we do need to start to look at the tools that Arts Access provides insight that Kelly, you're providing for the arts, and Nicola, and how we can look at a funding avenue in this time right now to everybody that is providing online arts and doing a wonderful job at it, how we can make those accessible to those groups as well. And I'm putting my hand up to have a conversation with you off here. What I would like to ask of any of the participants here at this learning lunch is if you are or are thinking of doing any arts in the next 3 months as an online option to reach out so that we can have that knowledge and we can build something around it. Because let's be fair, level 3 goes next week. That's level 2 is not even going to mean that our arts world is back to a norm. So we need to be able to look at how we can do this, and I think there's something that we as a group here can do.
Kia ora, Rachel. Thanks very much. Yes, and thanks for mentioning our group and our real interest in sharing and being part of this story. And also a growing dedication to keeping this advocacy going throughout the crisis and then beyond it as well. And we want everybody's voices to be involved in that. It's an independent group, independent of all organisations, advocating for practitioners. Stace, you wanted to say something?
Oh yes, I just wanted to say thank you to Kelly and Rachel and Catherine for clarifying my comments around captioning. Sometimes my brain moves faster than my mouth and I realised I hadn't finished half of that sentence, which was that New Zealand Sign Language is still the primary language of many in the deaf community. I also just wanted to comment on what Rachel said about funding, and that is that if you're writing funding applications around accessibility, part of what I can support you with is letters of support to go with those funding applications for your accessible shows in whatever format they might look like. And I just wanted to comment also in terms of holding on to the spirit of initiative and exploration. It would be amazing to see more collaboration between deaf and disabled artists in mainstream arts resulting from this situation. I think Zoom and other platforms offer great ways to connect beyond physical space. And there are so many amazing deaf and disabled artists around Aotearoa and around the world who have so much to offer. It would be really cool to see them having more space in this space.
Great, Stace. I totally agree. This time actually, you know, when some of the barriers are removed, assuming that people can connect digitally, for example, then why not collaborate with someone you haven't collaborated with before? Certain barriers are gone. The support might be available to make those artistic collaborations happen. And distance isn't an issue anymore. It can happen all over the world. We were talking in another learning lunch about digital and how there should be more collaborations with entrepreneurs and coders and people in the digital world to create artworks in this space. But all of this we are very much at the beginning of. It's wonderful to hear so many people talking about the positive things that can come from this time. Richard, you had your hand up. And I should say it's 2:30 now, which is the allotted time. So we're sort of heading towards the end.
Thanks, Simon. I'll just be brief because a really good thing has come up. You've been talking about advocacy and wanting to keep the momentum going. One of the things at Arts Access Aotearoa that we're passionate about is making sure that people who are disabled are the advocates themselves, which means being seen, which means turning up, which means being seen on the stages, in the screens. So for the disabled people or deaf people on the screens today, please stay in touch with us and Simon and team. It's just been a wonderful opportunity for us at Arts Access Aotearoa to be given this opportunity to connect with more people. And it's again another wonderful experience that COVID-19 is giving us in the silver lining to have this sort of outreach. But what we're talking about is advocacy being seen is about partnerships, and you were just mentioning that. So if you all who want to do those partnerships and get better at promoting what you want, but also what you're in and about, then please get in touch with Arts Access Aotearoa. Stace would be your best person to contact there, because we want a stronger group around New Zealand. And gosh, you know, this silver lining of getting together with this energy that everyone's part of would be super awesome.
Kia ora, Richard. Yeah, I would be quite interested in what this group thinks a follow-on discussion could be, because we may have the time for it. And for example, wouldn't it be wonderful to take Stace's challenge there and find some artists from disabled, hearing impaired communities and other artists, and actually have a dreaming session about what can we create together now, and maybe some collaborations could come out of it. So there's an idea. So have a think about that and perhaps put something in the chat. Before we go, Rachel just did want to say something quickly.
Just wanted to sort of talk about something quickly, very positively, that was happening over the weekend. And Stace, this is about, as you mentioned, people being able to collaborate together, but in their own spaces. The 48-hour film festival went ahead at the weekend with people creating short films from their own homes. I know in my house, there was somebody that was working on the animation side, whereas someone in another space was filming, and then that was edited together. So in a few weeks, we're going to see the outcomes of some really interesting films that were created without anybody being in the same space. Directors, actors, writers, filmmakers, all in their own homes. So that will be an exciting thing to see, as well as to how that cross collaboration from our own homes can happen.
Kia ora, Rachel. Well, I think we have we've run out of time. It's just after 2:30 now. So thank you very much for everyone that attended, especially to our panelists, Kelly and Rachael, Richard and Stace, and of course to the very hardworking Jeremy, who was signing for us today. We're very grateful for that. Thank you everybody who also contributed ideas either through the chat or by speaking as well. We are very grateful. As I mentioned, it is being recorded and will be made available for sharing. And we would like to hear your ideas. Just message the Facebook group or message here and let us know about how we can carry this conversation on and what we could possibly talk about next. Kia ora koutou.